Today's Take 5 with the Saints March the 6th is one of these in which, instead of figures which are so notable and so worthy of our admiration but kind of come across as larger-than-life figures like John Cassian from yesterday, today we have more modern-day saints who were Episcopalians in their life and practice, but they are saints on our calendar because of some contributions that you may not have been aware were the result of faithful work of Episcopalians within the medical and scientific fields. You may recognize the last names of these individuals, William W. Mayo and Charles F. Menninger, founders of the Mayo Clinic and the Menninger Institute, respectively, that were cutting edge in how patients in hospitals and psychiatric patients were treated, revolutionizing both of these medical industries, as we would now call them today, to ironically, as now many times we talk about how the medical profession has become an industry that disregards the patient, how these two created medical practices that were honoring the needs of the patient, and in particular for Menninger, portraying psychiatric needs not as people who needed to be thrown into a sanitarium, but as people who needed medical treatment in a humane fashion, just as if they had any other physical ailment. So, I look forward to sharing with you a little bit about their lives today. Our scripture that goes with their feast day comes out of Luke chapter 8, verses 40 through 56. Now, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. Just then there came a man named Jairus, a leader of the synagogue. He fell at Jesus' feet and begged him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter about 12 years old who was dying. As he went, the crowds pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. And though she had spent all she had on physicians, no one could cure her. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his clothes, and immediately her hemorrhage stopped. Then Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds surround you and press in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I noticed that power had gone out from me." When the woman saw that she could not remain hidden, she came trembling. And falling down before him, she declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher any longer." When Jesus heard this, he replied, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be saved." When he came to the house, he did not allow anyone to enter with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. They were all weeping and wailing for her, but he said, "Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand and called out, "Child, get up." Her spirit returned, and she got up at once. Then he directed them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he ordered them to tell no one what had happened. In that story, we hear not only it's a performance of Jesus' miracles healing people who were sick or dead in the other case, but also the compassion that went with him, a compassion particularly shown towards the woman with hemorrhages who, in reaching out and sort of stepping out of her place, so to speak, at least in the customs of that time, a woman actually reaching and physically touching a rabbi, which was unheard of, Jesus turns around and in her fear shows compassion in addition to the healing that had gone upon them. This was the essence of the vision of William Mayo and his sons, William J. Mayo and Charles H. Mayo. William W. Mayo was born in England but immigrated to work first as a pharmacist and then later as a doctor in the United States. Ultimately, they traveled out to Rochester, Minnesota and helped to establish St. Mary's, which was the first general hospital in Minnesota. But not long after they came there, in August of 1883, a huge tornado struck Rochester and destroyed a good portion of the town. Mayo, along with his sons, joined the Sisters of St. Francis, a Roman Catholic convent and community in the area, to help in that recovery, which brought up a few eyebrows. The rich Episcopalian doctors sort of working together with the Roman Catholic sisters. But what happened was, instead of just throwing patients in beds and treating their wounds, giving them ether and medicine as necessary, their partnership, the Mayos and the sisters, helped to create a system of patient care that emphasized the whole person spiritually as well as physically. And it was this that then gave vision to a practice that engaged other doctors of varying professions who could come together both to treat and to research the cause of illnesses. St. Mary's Hospital and then later the Mayo Clinic became a model that was not only an innovative scientific and research care facility, but was also a place where, for one of the first times, the patient became the center of medical care. The Mayo Clinic, for those of you and some of our congregation have had to travel there, are still known as one of the most outstanding places to receive treatment to this day. Charles F. Menninger, along with his sons, began establishing psychiatric practices in Topeka, Kansas, establishing a treatment facility there in 1925. They essentially performed treatment of psychiatric patients that took care of the needs of the patient and didn't simply either dismiss them as crazy, lock them up in an asylum, or just tell their parents that there was nothing that they could do. The notable accomplishments of what became known as the Menninger Clinic was advocacy for better treatment and also greater public information about how to deal with the mentally ill. One note about Charles Menninger's son, Carl, also a good Episcopalian, he wrote a book that became influential called Whatever Became of Sin, and understanding that recognizing personal, corporate, and systemic sin is a key component in personal and relational health. This book, written by someone who had medical background as well, became a standard textbook in seminaries within the 1970s and 1980s, particularly seminaries within the Episcopal Church. So I'm just scratching the surface. There's obviously a lot more to say about these two, but good Episcopalians and their sons who formulated new and breakthrough ways to not only research and treat medical and psychiatric issues, but how to recognize the importance of understanding that each patient was a gift from God and deserved the treatment of someone who deserved love and compassion above all others in the treatment process. That's all for today. Thank you for joining me. Tomorrow's feast day will be Perpetua and her companions, one of the most well-known martyrs of the very early church in the Roman Colosseum. Thanks, friends, for joining me. See you tomorrow.